We will now call this July 16th, 2024, Joliet Township High School Board meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Here.
Mrs. Lynn?
Present.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Here.
Dr. Huntington? Here. Mr. Coffey?
And now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome all of our visitors in person and those that are viewing via live stream. Your presence is greatly valued, and your engagement reflects the shared commitment to the success of our community as a whole. And we thank you for coming. Tanya, Ms. Rico.
No public comments.
No public comments. Thank you. So now we will go into our agenda. May I have a motion for a consent agenda?
Can we remove the Hopewell from the check register as well as the Hein Petrega? And then I also have a correction to the minutes on the 17th.
May I have a motion for
Yeah,
that?
so moved as amended by Dr. Huntington.
Second? May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
And then a motion to confirm the rest, approve the rest.
Did we indicate what the correction?
The correction was I abstained from the second vote, and it was listed as a yes vote last month.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So may I have a motion with the necessary correction?
Yes, so moved.
Second? Roll call, please.
This is a vote for the correction, correct? On the minutes?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
for correction. And then we'll do on with the additional things that were withheld.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
And now a motion to approve the remaining Hopewell stuff from the register that was withheld.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Abstain.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
So we'll go into, because we don't have any recognition and awards, we'll go into the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have some correspondence on legislative updates that I want to share. The first, and you may have seen some of these emails because I've gotten them from Illinois State Board of Education as well as the city regarding the U.S. EPA's Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program and grants that are available. And I want to assure the board that we have applied, but we've applied through a consortium. And our current request, and Dr. Hampton, please let me know if I have this incorrect, is for 10 electric school buses through the consortium. Dr. Hampton and Mr. Shaw are keeping their eyes open to any and all opportunities out there that relates to electric buses. And I don't know if you have anything to add, Dr. Hampton? Okay, so that's the first piece. The second piece, I do want to thank legislatively, there was a superintendent sit-down with Senator Capel and Representative Manley. Multiple superintendents from the area attended. It was a very nice meeting with some updates, and just to highlight, I did share my concern with the foreign language requirement that has been approved. Actually, it's been approved for a couple of years and is going to go into effect in a couple of years, because it would require all students to take 2 years of a world language as a graduation requirement, which would have a drastic effect on all electives, including fine arts, CTE, and other electives in areas. And so we were just talking about some potential options to maybe look at legislatively. But just for our district alone, when we did the data, it would mean we would need to hire 16 additional world language teachers, which that would mean that we would not need 16 other teachers. And so we've collected data for the region, and so many, all of our high schools would be affected by this legislation. So I did recommend maybe a waiver or looking at some things. And so I did feel heard, and it was a very nice meeting. And there were other things that we talked about too, like transportation with bus driver shortages and things like that. So I just, again, want to thank the senator and the representative for having that meeting. It was a good opportunity for us to share what's going on from all different perspectives. So then we are ready to go into our presentations this evening. So our first presentation is the Long Range Facility Plan Phase 2, Joliet West High School presentation, and I will let Dr. Hampton introduce our presenters.
Yes, we have Steve, Needy, and David here to present to the Board of Education more specific details around Phase 2 for Joliet West. We already presented Phase 2 for Central at our January meeting. So I will turn it over to Needy to get started.
Hi, glad to be here again. I want to say thank you on behalf of Gilbane and White. We're really excited to work with the district. We really love working with you and are excited to show you Phase 2 for West. As Dr. Hampton said, we presented Phase 2 for Central in January. We're also in the midst of Phase 1 right now. You guys know there's a lot of construction happening. Bus parking lot, culinary at both schools, indoor air quality at West, as well as fields at both schools, and T&I re-roof. So we have a lot of balls in the air right now, and we are excited to do the next step. Just to kind of go back, we approved the master plan last November. These are kind of some of the main goals for the master plan. The main thing for West was alleviate some hallway congestion. That was also happening at Central for the link. Create modern learning environments for classrooms. Consolidate your CTE spaces. That'll happen in this phase, as well as consolidate your PPS services. We know that your offices are kind of tight. You're adding more and more special services. You want everyone consolidated, and that's kind of happening in this phase as well. Just a reminder, this is what the current plan is at West. We will be working in certain areas. So all the highlighted areas of where we're working in, the biggest move you can see is the PPS suite that's adjacent to the courtyard. We're adding a new corridor there that's going to alleviate a lot of congestion. It's widening the corridor in preparation for a student center that will be added to the courtyard in future phase. Along with that, because there's some classrooms there right now, such as fashion, child development, we're already moving culinary. We are moving those spaces into the CTE suite, building A. So there's renovations happening in that location. And we will also renovate the old PPS locations, all your counselors' offices, back into classrooms. So that's kind of the larger scope of this project. The other part is some maintenance that you guys need. Your roofs are kind of need to be replaced, so we are replacing the roof above the above your gym and your locker room spaces in the building. I'll let Steve take.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So we're going to cover just a few specific highlights of Phase 2, and we're going to start really in the middle of the building. So this is in what's referred to as Building B of Joliet West, the library. It's just west of the library. The main office is off the top of the screen in the upper right corner. So the big move here is creating a new north-south hallway on the campus, a much wider hallway that actually aligns with the other hallways. That's just one of the big moves, is to alleviate some of the hallway congestion. Where that blue arrow is, that runs up and down on the screen, is where currently culinary, fashion merchandising, and child development is. Of course, we're moving culinary to the new addition. And then today we'll talk about the new locations for child development and fashion merchandising so that we can create this new hallway. Equally important is the renovation work happening next to the hallway, and that is really a consolidated PPS office suite. During the master plan, we had one or two options about what the best location for PPS was. Was it best suited further east, closer to the main office, or is it best suited here where it's a little bit more centralized? And ultimately, when we dug into it, we found that this was the best location, given that in future phases, we're gonna have a new student commons adjacent to this. So it made a lot of sense to get all those resources of counselors and deans and social workers right there where the students are gonna be. Also taking note of just a renewed focus on the freshman class, so knowing where those students are gonna be scheduled, knowing that they're still gonna use the cafeteria and the applied life spaces. This was a much more centralized location for these resources. So we did plan it as a phased approach, and this is really just in order to keep classrooms usable during construction. So it was planned that we would actually build a portion of this new office suite, but keep those 4 red rectangles in place. Those 4 red rectangles are actually existing classrooms. And then the magenta kind of area in the upper right is where most of the current PPS offices are. So the first phase will be do as much office renovation as we can, but keep those 4 classrooms in operation during the school year. And then likely the following summers, when we'd renovate those 4 classrooms, complete the office suite, and then turn the existing PPS offices back into classrooms. So just some phasing we did in the planning, just so we didn't take any classrooms offline during construction. And then this is sort of it's what we call a bird's eye view, just to get a better sense of the office suite. So in addition to programming all the office space that we need, we also took into account some additional conference room space in this office suite. There's going to be some staff toilets in this office suite as well. Obviously some waiting, reception, administrative areas, places to copy, collate, and do some work. And this diagram probably best shows how this office suite really fronts the hallway and really will front the future student commons, all in an effort to sort of create a very open, accessible, welcoming place for students to come and visit. So now we're going to kind of jump down to the A building. This is where primarily most of the CTE curriculum is located. And this location highlighted in red is where we're actually going to propose to move the fashion merchandising and interior design room. So this is kind of part of the master plan goal to get all of CTE kind of curriculum spaces together, which is why we're moving into building A. There's also some feedback we got from the staff that the family and consumer science courses, they actually liked being next to each other. That made sense. So they're neighbors now. They're going to continue to be neighbors once they move into their new location. And this is sort of a kind of design bird's eye view of what that space is going to be like. Really, this is all about keeping all the infrastructure we need for this curriculum around the perimeter of the room, and then keeping the middle of the room as highly flexible as we can. So lots of layout space for both interior design and fashion, big tables. Those are actually mobile tables with lots of different storage options underneath, and then really use the perimeter of the room for infrastructure and much needed storage around the space. And then the next area is room A11 in building A, and this is where we propose the new child development room. And this is done twofold. One, to get a room that we could adequately fit both a preschool area and a high school class in, but it also had a great location where it had direct access to the outdoors. There could be dedicated drop-off and pick-up for the preschool program without necessarily having to travel too far into the campus and the school. So here you clearly see there's going to be a kind of a classroom side, and then there's going to be a preschool side, and there's actually going to be an optical partition that separates the space. And that partition could have some glass in it so that the high school students can do observation from the classroom into the preschool. But if there's bad weather, or if the preschool's having an event, they could open up this room and use it as one large space for gross motor activities, or or holiday events that they might have. But all the features of dedicated toilets, it's going to have its own security vestibule, kitchen features, and obviously furniture for both the high school students and the preschool. And then the last space that's sort of part of the shuffle is relocating photography to that location in red. So in addition to just the workstations and the computer use that happens in photography, there's going to be a new kind of expanded dark room as part of this suite, and then a dedicated actually print development area, which is something that we heard from the staff. And even carving out areas of the room where portraits and still lifes could take place with backdrops and cameras. So a lot of digital work, but still a lot of the traditional photography work happening in here. And this entire sort of suite would have all the different spaces for those different functions to happen. So we're not quite at the point of design where we're picking out finishes. That's going to come soon, but we did want to give you a sneak peek of some conceptual images of what these spaces look like. We always try to think about the existing campus or even some of the recent work that's been done here, just so we keep a level of consistency. So the brick, there's obviously school pride in the shades of yellow and black that sort of show up in the colors. Even some of the patterning that's been used at the media centers or the collaboration corridor, we're thinking about on the glass. A little design nugget, a lot of the patterns in the media center and on the chairs is actually angular and triangulation. That's actually inspired by the W of West too. So just some little design nuggets we're building into the patterns of what we ultimately did. So still early, but this is just a conceptual view of what that waiting reception area is starting to take shape. But obviously, large area, very open to the hallway and the commons, but adequate places for not only students to wait, but also for people to work and greet students. This is kind of an artist's view of the new fashion lab. So lots of layout space. You see some of the sewing stations around the perimeter. You start to see some of the cues from the W section of the design elements. The child development room, so in the back of this image is where you see the more of the traditional high school classroom, but then really having a much more authentic preschool environment for the kiddos. Even some built-in to really make this feel like this is a preschool room. So, true to life kind of learning experience for the kids. And then the last is sort of how the interior view of the photography. So what you don't see is behind us is the print development area, the dark room, lots of layout space. Back left image is where we're planning on a portrait area for some students to set up portraits and still lifes, and of course, all the computer uses for digital photography as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to David to talk about schedule and budget.
Good evening. So I got my spreadsheet to go through. At this level of budgeting, we're at design development, so we still have a lot of work to do to get from where we're at in design development through construction documents and bidding. But we have the same structure as we presented before. In this particular case, we actually broke down the project into its areas. So we budgeted Area A, which is fashion, photography, and childcare, separately from Area B, so we kind of track these individual projects, although they'll be bid all together as one project. So we have the same breakdown where the subtotal construction is right now what we're calling bricks and mortar as your true construction cost. Below that, we're still carrying escalation for approximately the midpoint of construction. And then since we're early on in design, we're carrying design contingency. Typically, as we do more investigation and develop the design, that budget gets rolled up into the bricks and mortar piece, and then construction contingency is established there for construction. If we open up a wall, find something we didn't know about, that we have the funds to deal with that. And then finally, below that, we have the owner's cost. That's professional fees, miscellaneous owner's cost of moving, vacating classrooms, and the management fees. So the total of all that is a total project cost for our budgeting. Area A is approximately $5 million. Area B is approximately $9 million, and then Area D, the roof, we're budgeting around $3 million for a total project cost of approximately $17 million. Schedule-wise, a lot of these projects are summer only. For example, Area D roof, that's a summer only project. So we would bid all of these together. We're targeting the December board meeting for award. That gives us time to get contracts established, submittals, and then be ready to start construction. They will all start in the summer with the exception of Area B. We're going to target, I think it's photography, is to maybe jump in that a little bit earlier just to take some of the pressure off the summer crunch. But for the most part, the entire Area A has to be turned over for the summer of '25. The B roof, August of '25 also. Area B, the one that we talked about being phased, we're going to start that in the summer, but it's actually more work that can be done than possible for the summer, so that will be a little bit later turnover, late fall, winter, and then we would come back in the summer of '26 to do that second phase that we talked about, the 4 classrooms and adjustment.
Any questions from the board?
Just thankful.
It's beautiful. I don't have a question. Can I make comments?
Yeah.
Okay. First, when I was looking at this weekend, I was hanging out with a few artists, and one of my friends was extremely impressed as a photographer that graduated from Joliet Central. She travels around the world doing wedding photography, and she was just jealous, and she loved it. And then my boss, Jim Glasgow, who, and loves the Birth to 5 program, and I just want to say, just looking at just the entire program, when people talk about JT and how we're trying to look towards the future and really keep in mind our demographic and the students that are going to come here and how we can shape their future, including life skills such as childcare, culinary arts, the arts in general. I just think that you really gave that vision, I can't even think of the word right now. You put it into reality. So we just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is a follow-up on our discussion, solar panel presentation. And again, I'll let Dr. Hampton introduce our presenters.
Yes, actually, this conversation started it started with Mr. Kennedy a few years ago, but we revisit this conversation as we've been discussing the Renew America School Grant, which was the grant that we won with a consortium of other school districts to bring in electric school buses. And in that conversation, we were talking solar panels and the microgrid at the transportation center, and the conversation came up, what about the rest of the district? And we never completed a full assessment of what can happen at our campuses in regards to the solar panels. So IEC, Illinois Energy Consortium, which Econergy and Future Green are a part of, came out, completed a full assessment of West, Central, District Office, Pathways, Transition, and Transportation Center, and just gave us some recommendations on how we can truly implement this program and also have cost savings associated with that as we talk about energy efficiency and going green. So we have Atticus and Tom here who will present the information to you all, and feel free to ask questions as they move through the presentation.
Thank you very much. Atticus Franken, representing the Illinois Energy Consortium. Just for slight background, the Illinois Energy Consortium was formed and is governed by the 3 school management associations, the IASA, the Illinois Association of School Administrators, the Illinois Association of School Boards, and the Illinois Association of School Business Officials. And they have a board that oversees all the activities of the consortium. And that was started because of 2 things. One, energy is fast changing, and it's hard for many to keep up with what's going on. And what it also is there's a lot of really good work to be done on cost savings at school facilities, whether they're newer with new opportunities or aging facilities where you can still revamp the energy spend and have a lot of structural savings. But really, it's mostly advocacy. I mean, the associations exist for that purpose. We are owned by them, so we also have to exist for that purpose. And that's why, as an example, there are school incentives or renewable energy certificates that were passed in the Clean Energy Jobs Bill in Illinois that carve out schools specifically. And the funny thing is, we were the only energy initiative that was lobbying in support of the school carve-out for this, as opposed to all of the other renewable energy companies, organizations out there, because we fit a specific role and we have a specific purpose. So I'll pass it over to Todd to go through some of the recommendations, but I thought it always is helpful to kind of give a little context as to why we exist, why the consortium works to support bus electrification, grant efforts, solar development, and other services that we can provide. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and for the opportunity. And what I wanted to start off with today, my name is Todd Main. I'm a director with Econergy, and we manage the consortium on behalf of the three organizations that Atticus referenced. What I wanted to do is to start out today and just talk a little bit about why, and give you a little context of why seeking to think about renewable energy for your schools is an important and valuable task. I mean, we sort of all know about renewables, and we all know about that, but it's really changed a lot in the last couple of years. And so let me give you a couple quick points. First one is that renewable energy now, both wind and solar, is the cheapest form of generating electricity pretty much across the world. It's now cheaper than natural gas. It's now cheaper than coal. And it is a fastest growing sector of the energy generation market. So while we are very supportive of the environmental benefits and the climate benefits of those kind of issues, that's not what's driving the growth of renewable energy. It's economics that are driving the growth of renewable energy. And what that means for your district is that you have an opportunity. And because in this environment, when renewables are going to be that's going to be the future, there's probably two main pathways that this is going to go. So it's going to go either your electricity that's generated by renewables will be set up by large companies, both local and national, and they will sell you the electricity at about the same price that you're paying right now. Or you have the opportunity to take a little ownership of your energy, not only your spend, but the impact of your spend. And then you get to enjoy the benefits of that. And so what I'm here today is to offer you a vision of what that could look like if you want to explore that some more. So this is what we've done is this is the analysis. I'm sure some of you have looked at this before. I'll just run through it top line and then we can open it up for questions. So the first facility we're going to look at is Joliet West High School. This is essentially a system that will generate pretty significant savings. So the yellow is sort of the rooftops. These would be all there. And you would generate about 58% of all of your electric demand for that facility. And this is sort of the detailed analysis. I won't go through that because none of us can read it on the screen, but you have it all and it's all available for you to look at. And here's the environmental benefits. It's like planting 34,000 trees. It's taking off 500 cars off the road every year that you put it together. The next facility we wanted to talk about is Joliet Central. And this has, again, pretty significant savings. About almost $10,000 a year just on your electric bill. this is what it would look like. This facility will generate about 97% of all the electricity that you need.
That's just the field house. Right.
Again, this is like taking, planting 6,000 trees, or taking, 90 cars off the road in terms of air emissions. The next facility we looked at was Joliet Central. This will generate about 91% of all the energy you need for this facility.
What's the difference between the buildings?
So because they're all set up differently, correct, Dr. Hampton?
Yeah, so as you can see in the diagrams, if we go back to West, it's just about every building where we would have solar panels. The reason it's different at Central is because of the equipment that's on top of the building. So there are only certain areas within Central that we can actually derive energy savings from. And because they're on different meters, we had to separate those out, right? So you have the T&I building, you have the pathways, you have the transition center. We talked about possibly doing some solar panels like in the parking lots, but the technology isn't there yet. So we're hoping that ultimately there's going to be another phase with that.
The other advantage about rooftop over ground mount systems is they've gotten a lot better at the racks that they put them on. And so they just basically set them on top of the roofs now and then weight them down. So they're not puncturing the membrane on the roof. So you don't have any increased maintenance or invalidation of the roof warranties on these facilities.
That makes sense.
And that's really been a game changer. Jump back to where we were.
Yep.
And here's the transportation center. Going to generate 90% of all the demand that you need for that, just from rooftop. That will generate, that'll take about 82 cars off the road and plant almost 5,700 trees. And then the administration building. Generate about 85% of all the energy you need from that facility. So one of the things to understand about solar is that you're going to get savings off of comparison to what your electric rates are currently. And each one of those facilities will generate substantial savings for you, which then you can reallocate for other purposes. The big advantage of renewables is that what they do is they take your energy costs and fix those over the life of the project. So energy prices go up and down with the market. Primarily, the way energy markets work is that they follow natural gas prices. And so, I don't know if you remember a couple years ago when Texas had a big storm in the winter and everybody's natural gas bills went crazy. Well, that impacted the whole country. And so people's electric rates followed that unless they were in a fixed contract. What renewables do is they fix the price of your energy because it's coming from your solar panels. And so you can budget fixed prices over the life of the project, and you get a certain amount of savings that go each of those. But your savings is going to grow over time because energy prices, if you look at them historically over the last 40 or 50 years, they go up between 4 and 7% a year. So it's almost like compounding interest. So your advantages over the life of the project will grow. And these are just a couple examples of other solar projects that we're doing with school districts. The consortium that you've heard us mention, we manage energy for just under 200 school districts in Illinois and just about 200 or so in Northeast Ohio. And so we've got a lot of background and experience in figuring out how to do this kind of stuff. And because we're a nonprofit, we're advocates for the schools, we pass all of the revenue back over to you guys, so you can enjoy that. This is the project we just finished in Stark County. And there's a little project we did on the IASA roof in Springfield, I'm sorry. And there's also a schedule of build out, and we can go through that. But I think what I'd like to do at this point is stop for a minute and open it up for questions.
Can you go back to just a school? Let's go to Joliet West savings. And of course, it shows the savings, but I don't see what it's going to cost us to put them up.
That's a good question. So it will not cost you anything to put them up. The way we do it is we finance it through what we call a power purchase agreement. So you know what you're paying on the bill now, of course. As you can read it from the bill, you can see what you're paying. And then we give a contract saying, we pay for all the installation, we take responsibility for the maintenance, insurance, the liabilities that go along with that, all of those things. And the agreement is to pay for power at the new reduced rate as the system produces it. So essentially,
Let's just talk real simple.
Yeah.
You guys are, I understand what you just said. You guys are generating 100,000 kilowatts, so you figure, the way I understand how it works is, if we're below that, we pay for it. And if it's above that, you give us credit back?
correct. So that's what they call net metering.
Right,
And
that
yeah.
makes sense.
So if you overproduce one area,
Right.
it counts for when you underproduce a different time and it levels out.
And there won't be batteries, it just goes in the grid?
Correct.
That makes
So the way this
sense.
has been presented, yes.
What about tornado, like we just had? You guys paying for any of that, or no?
So that's where the insurance comes in. So these things are fully insured for anything, I guess, acts of God, tornadoes, anything like that. So that happens. The worst case scenario, for anything that happens with solar, the worst case scenario is you go back to paying the old utility rate. So when these things, if they were shut down or, I guess, disappeared
Right.
for some reason. So what would happen is it would go to the utility rate briefly while they get swapped out, which again, isn't a very cumbersome process, but takes a little bit of time.
It's an important consideration though, because you're not going to get 100% of your power from these, so you're still going to be connected to the grid.
Right.
So there's never a scenario where you're not going to be without power. You know,
Yeah.
it's sort of redundant, built in, so you've got stability, and you always have that peace of mind that whether it's a tornado or whether it's, you know, a nor'easter or, you know.
I know the product is fairly new in the whole industry, but is there a life expectancy of a panel?
Panels, right now, the insurance will underwrite them for 40 years now. Or any average travelers, any of the big insurance outfits.
Our roofs only last about 20. So 20 years from now, are you gonna pay to have them lifted so we could put a new roof on?
Yes, that's correct. So that's
Okay.
included in there.
Great.
And the things that probably will need to be replaced are the inverters, and those last about, I don't know, 12 or 15 years.
Yeah.
But that's, the replacement cost of that is built into the contract, so it's not something you have to worry about.
So in light of the recent storms and power outages, how would this help be able to keep like main things on in the schools? Like West has power outage, this would help keep specific things on during that time, obviously when the sun's out, but, okay.
Yeah, and that's, the other thing is looking at, like, for example, military installations. It's part of the US's plan for resiliency.
Okay.
It's installing renewable energy. So we're just as a matter of defense, every military installation now has renewable energy on site, just because they don't want to have any grid dependency
For obvious reasons, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next presentation is our annual Suicide and Depression Awareness and Prevention presentation. And we have John Randich and Julie Edelman that is going to take us through our data for this year.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Evening.
So this year, our JTHS committee, we had a good variety of support staff. I believe it's 4 counselors, 4 social workers, 4 admin, a school psychologist. And we met here in the late spring here at the admin center. As you know, this is a district policy, board policy that we are to meet once a year. We're to meet, it could be multiple times, but we are to meet, review, and report out once a year. What's important about our district policy is that the emphasis of this policy is on protecting, promoting, and providing. That's kind of how we looked at it this year. So protecting the health of our students and the safety and the welfare of our students, promoting a healthy development. Again, we know we're working with teenagers. This is a development process, being in high school in multiple facets. So we know that we need to promote and work with them on developing healthy, healthy development, and then providing resources. So that's an area where the last few years we really have grown, providing resources for our students, for our parents and guardians, and actually for our community as well. So this slide shows the work we did this year. A couple things to point out is we met. During that meeting, we wanted to ensure that both campuses are logging information accurately, and we determined that, to the best of our knowledge, we are. We wanted to discuss trends in the cases and review any new mandates or initiatives. And then one of the highlights of our committee work this year is we really are going to do some work when we come back to school to explore opportunities to offer mental health first aid for our teachers. So our teachers do a good job of building relationships with our students. We would like to see how we can help and provide them some information, some training, some skills to really be that frontline support just when students start bringing up and talking about mental health.
This gets down now to the numbers. I will not review each one of these, but you will see the breakdown of our data for race and gender in the next 2 slides. And then in regards to after we identified the students, and students came to our attention, some came to us directly through our counselors, deans, social workers, sometimes directly to a trusting teacher or a coach, and sometimes from another peer, something on social media maybe that alarmed them, or that they were saying to them or confiding to them. So, and these were the avenues that they then went and received some help outside of our school setting. This is kind of hard to see up on the screen, but I know you have it in your packet. You will see that we've had an increase this year from last year, which although it's not always a negative for that to be an increase in number. That's saying also that we're reaching a number of students, 85 students that we were able to feel comfortable enough to get help for, and we are looking at really removing that stigma of if you have a situation where you're at a point where you're asking for help, that's important to identify, and our school is a place that they can come to. So providing that environment that we were able to identify 85 of those students. And just as important, after we identify those students, what are we doing after the fact? After we do work with the families and get them the resources that they need outside of school and in school, we know that that's a very raw moment for our families. So creating an after plan, a safety plan for when they return, so they know who their supports are while in school. Because we know although we are a structured setting, there's a time where they can be unstructured, going to the bathrooms, the hallways. So we work with our families to make sure that they know that we will have a structured setting for them when they return. And here just identifies when we reviewed our assessments. These are not, this is not just a social worker or counselor making a gut decision. There are screeners that we use, tools that we use to determine the level of risk, to determine if they, what areas where we're going with that family. If we're going, not every student necessarily needs an assessment from an outside resource. Sometimes we can keep students in-house, but that's the assessment screener that we reviewed. Questions?
I have a question. Jerry, you had talked about the mental health first aid, and I think it was listed as explore, but it sounded to me like we're moving in that direction. Do we have plans for professional development for all staff or just PPS staff?
So the committee discussed getting some support, some training for our teachers as frontline. That was kind of the theme that we talked about during the committee. We've talked a little bit about that this summer, but we don't have any set plans yet.
So it will be explored during the school year. You'll look at those
That's the plan.
opportunities. Okay.
Yes.
Something that we do minimally is part of Institute Day. We do have a social workers do present that if you do have a time where you feel as if a student might be exhibiting some risk factors, we review our system on how they can reach out to, because we don't want a math teacher then reaching out to the family. We want to then trigger, okay, who do you get a hold of? How quick do you get a hold of them? We want to make sure staff are not sending an email hoping that somebody sees it. We make sure that they have the cell phone numbers of administrators. We want to know that they know that you do not keep that student alone, that we react to that very quickly. So we do review that at the very minimal, at the very beginning of the year, but then we did identify that we want our staff to feel more comfortable, being able to be equipped to identify that. But they're doing a very nice job with it, but I think it's just an area that we would just want to push them to be more comfortable with.
Yeah, I was just curious only because sometimes when you give people that professional development, they decide, oh, well, I can provide the service, and so sometimes that's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why it was the first day, we're like, don't do this yourself, and make sure that they're reaching out to our people.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And they're part of the next presentation too. But we have our annual exclusionary discipline and student support presentation. And we have multiple administrators here with us tonight. And I'll let them introduce themselves as they share information.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Locke, Joliet Central Assistant Principal, and I will begin the presentation on the exclusionary discipline and student support service presentation. And as we proceed in the presentation, people can introduce themselves at that time. Okay. So the first few slides are just simply our enrollment and demographics. You have our race and ethnicity breakdown at the two main campuses, Central and West. This slide here shows you our EL status at both campuses, Central being at 28% EL students, West being at 14% last school year. Free and reduced lunch indicator, Joliet Central at roughly 79% and West at 60%. We then go into our IEP status with Central being at 16% and the West campus at 12% of our students. And now we start getting into the discipline data. Right here are simply just the 2021, 2022, and then the 2022-23 breakdown school year of all of our ODR or office discipline referrals. This slide here is our past school year and the breakdown again of all of the codes within Infinite Campus of our ODRs or office discipline referrals.
And Mr. Locke, just because this presentation is lengthy and we do build in time for questions, but if the board has any questions as we're going through, like on a specific slide, please just, and it's not interrupting, but please point it out so while we're at that data, we can talk through it. because I know that there's a lot of data in here, and we provided a lot for reference for comparison.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Guzman. So yeah, please stop us at any time, and obviously, we have some experts in different areas up here, so obviously, if the presenter can't answer a specific question, I'm sure somebody else will be able to. So again, that is our 23-24 ODR based on each campus, including Pathways and Transition Center. Here we have the ODR race breakdown for each of the two main campuses at Central and Joliet West, based on the referrals issued on ethnicity at the campuses. We then have our ODR breakdown for IEP status students in the 23-24 school year, Central and West. Our EL students on this slide. Free or reduced lunch indicator.
Steve, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
The ODR status, that's for any time teacher or somebody puts pen to paper and sends them to the dean's office?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. These are the severe infractions, and this is district across the board, and this slide gives you a pretty clear indicator of the past 3 school years, from the 21-22 school year, moving on to the 22-23 school year, and then this most recent school year. And again, this is district data, and it's also data reflects the number of students in an infraction, not the number of incidents, okay? And that will be on the next few slides as well. The Joliet Central breakdown of severe infractions over the past 3 school years. We then move into the Joliet West. Severe infractions, referrals written in those categories.
And one thing I just want to point out on here, because we did a pretty significant campaign to make sure that we're reminding students, especially students that work at Walmart and different areas, about what is allowed in school, what's not allowed in school, and to be very mindful of that. And I think that the campaign and the communication and the reinforcement has worked, because one area I think that we've seen significant decrease that we'll continue to work on, but it's just weapons. And this isn't the use of weapons, it's just, and
Having a weapon.
yes, and in the majority of cases, like in 99% of the situations, nothing was used as a weapon, but they had it on them, and a lot of times it was like, I forgot it was in my bag and things like that. And so we've really worked on that, and I appreciate the schools for tracking this, but then also working with families on this, and as well as Christine's office
Being
through
proactive.
communication, yes.
Yep, you can tell the communications
Yes.
made a big difference. It's about a 60% decrease over the last 2 years.
Yep.
Well done.
And I know that was a big point of emphasis for the board a few years ago, and I think this is a demonstration of, you know, us finding success in this area and then working through the other areas that we have as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, last year during our presentation, if memory serves me correctly, I think the board had asked us to pay close attention to the locations of the severe infractions, so we did do that for this school year. And it probably is no surprise that most of our infractions in regards to severe are in unstructured areas, such as cafeterias, hallways. So things that we have done, obviously security, our security team does a very good job, but sometimes we're not fully manned. So with that being said, we have taken, at both campuses, we have taken the opportunity to ask teachers who are willing to be hallway monitors during class time out in the hall. And again, a very restorative approach in regards to helping the students get to where they need to be, not necessarily disciplining them, but asking where they're supposed to be. And I am not gonna sugarcoat it, sometimes kids can get confrontational, but initially, we truly do try to walk them to their classes, have those conversations, build those relationships with them, and get them where they need to be. Severe infractions by race and ethnicity. The breakdown for both campuses, Central on the left, West on the right. Severe infractions based on IEP status. Again, just focusing right now on the 2 main campuses. severe infractions by EL status at Central and West, severe infractions by free and reduced indicators for last school year, and that will move us into our exclusionary discipline data.
I have a question real quick. I was looking at, most of the referrals are like hall class conduct versus disrespect. Like, what's the distinguishing between those two different categories?
So some of the hallway, misconduct or the class misconduct, a lot of times what we have, Mr. Markham and I, we have really made a point of emphasis to differentiate between the two. Disrespect tends to be, more times than not, a teacher's referral based on an interaction with the student. And the guys, again, chime in, where classroom or hallway misconduct is something that we started coding, Mr. Markham and I, with the yellow tickets. So the yellow tickets infractions, just so when we pull this data for the board, it was a way that we could separate, because a lot of teachers don't write the yellow tickets. It's typically our security, almost like a demerit, if you will. And after the students accumulate X amount, they're all turned into the main office. We tally them, and then we get the deans involved when students hit a certain amount of yellow tickets. And that tends to be the hallway. I know it says hallway classroom, that's just what Infinite Campus kind of has it coded as. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just curious about that.
Just to add to that too, one of the things that we talked about in the parent-teacher advisory this year is moving forward, you'll see those separated. So classroom conduct and hallway conduct will be separate, and that'll help us with looking at data and where things are happening a little bit too.
Have we looked at the disrespect and like what the breakdown is of who's getting the referrals for disrespect?
Well, we certainly break down, we can see what staff members, and then make sure that we look at the staff members who are writing those referrals, and making sure when we implement our, restorative practices, and you'll see this in later slides, really targeting, that's a strong word, but getting teachers the professional development they need to maybe figure out a different way to have those conversations with those kids, and I guess it's very subjective as far as, the disrespect. So I don't want to, mix my words. Some teachers are just, a little bit more experienced, and sometimes have a different, interpretation of what class, school of discipline should be, and that's what we're working on with our restorative practices and our tier interventions, et cetera.
That's from last year. I know that's something you guys had worked on, so that's really good. But it'd be interesting to see like what the different breakdown of ethnicities are of who is receiving those disrespect.
Specifically for disrespect?
Yeah,
We can
because
pull them.
that, I think that would bring, it's just, I'm curious
pull
to
that.
see if it is, matches the different data, matches, the different,
Because that was
information.
subjective.
Because that one is so subjective, exactly,
Yeah,
thank you.
I can speak to that as well. Although you're going to see some restorative practices that we're looking to expand upon at the end of this presentation. So if a dean is seeing a repeated pattern of a student and teacher, let's say they've gotten multiple referrals, those kinds of things, if they're having ongoing issues with that, it is an expectation that the teacher and the dean get together and have a conversation so that
Sorry.
We're being blinded.
Yes, sorry. Oh my God.
So that.
Sorry. I prefer to see the sunshine compared to yesterday.
Taking place, so that whatever is the contentious moment, the contentious behavior, that we're not just serving, we're not just passing the paperwork through the dean's office, we're bringing the teacher down, bringing the student down, and we're having restorative conversations. So, okay, what do we need to do to move forward to make sure this disrespect isn't happening again? See each other more of a human being in the dean's office, so that hopefully we don't see a pattern of that behavior happening any longer.
I see a lot of growth in that, so thank you, compared to even last year, like how much work you guys have worked on.
And I will say both teachers and deans are very receptive to it. So our teachers, a lot of times, are giving up their plan times or lunch times, coming in before or after school. They're wanting to do it because they don't like writing these either.
Right.
Many of times they're frustrated, and a dean doesn't want to keep processing referrals either. So
Yeah.
that is happening.
So thank you for all that.
partnership. I'm here to talk about our expulsion data. So I will go through our expulsion data pretty quickly because the board is very familiar with it. We've looked at each and every case, so we'll move through this pretty quickly. But in this past school year, we had 17 expulsions. And I'd like to note that this is a significant decline from previous years. And we would like to continue to see that decline moving forward.
Yes.
Thank you for the work that's being done.
So this is our expulsion data broken down by gender. And then this is our expulsion data broken down by race, by our grade levels, by campus. And as you can see, each year it fluctuates for a variety of different reasons, factors. This is our expulsion data based on month. And something else that I would like to note is that the expulsions are happening later in the year. And we think that that is because we're having more effective programs such as Catalyst. And then this is our expulsion data based on recommended placement by the board.
I mean, if you look at the expulsions by race, it's, you know, a little bit more where it should be on target. So that's like just so commendable compared to last year. And hopefully continue to work on seeing those patterns go down. But that's definitely a good thing to note out and say thank you for.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Brett Markham, one of the assistant principals at Joliet West. So the next set of data we're going to talk about is out-of-school suspension data. The first two slides have very similar information, just presented a little bit differently. On this first slide, again, we're looking at, I think in the 21-22 school year is when we really started to look at the data very closely and on a very consistent basis. And so that's where we know that we have, our data is highly accurate starting from there. So that's why you're seeing that trend of where we're starting at. And as we build over time, we'll be able to look at more long range. So for suspensions, you know, on this slide you can see the number of students suspended, broken out by campus, and then total days of out-of-school suspension. On this slide, it's just, I think this one's a little bit easier to read, and it just looks at days of OSS. So what you see here is a significant decrease, again, correlates with the addition of the Catalyst program, real efforts to incorporate our teachers and work with our staff on decreasing the number of days that students are out of school, because we know that we can support them better when they're with us in school.
And I just want to say that I'm just very appreciative to this group and then others who have worked really hard on this data. As the board knows, we implemented Infinite Campus during COVID. And, you know, we had to figure out the new coding system and how to work with the data in the new system. And there's always growing pains with that. And I completely agree with Mr. Markham, soon to be Dr. Markham, that we look at this on a monthly basis. You know, Mr. Markham, Mr. Locke are giving us data to look at on a monthly basis. We're identifying where there's issues so we can pivot right away when there's problems and see where we're at. And so it does take a village, and it's a lot of work, but they've prioritized this, and I want to thank them. I do feel like our data is correct, but I also feel like our data is showing that we're making headway, more importantly. While we have a lot more work to do and we're never going to be done with this work, the team has just done amazing work, and they're on it like every day. And most of you work in schools or connected to schools, so you know how easy it's to go on to the next thing. So getting things in the system so that we can look at it is sometimes a Herculean task. And so again, I just really appreciate that.
So then these next set of slides just disaggregates the data by different demographics, right? So race, ethnicity, and these are individual students, the number of times they were suspended, right? By IEP status. So obviously, as we go through these, you know, Dr. Guzman mentioned how much work we put into it. We feel like we've made some progress. We still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We know that. So we're just going to continue to work on these things. And by having that data in a better place, it allows us to have those conversations when we run into concerns or issues. in-school or our intensive student support program data. So this is our old in-school suspension program. This slide just breaks down the number of ISS assignments. We made a lot of changes to ISS coming back from COVID. It used to be more of like a detention program, so you could go for a period, you could go for a few periods. ISS now is more of a full-day intervention program. And also in an effort to keep students in school, you're seeing a higher use of ISS, which doesn't necessarily mean that there's more discipline, it just means that we're using it more because we're trying to keep kids with us in school.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
The numbers there, those are number of students, not number of days.
Correct.
Okay.
And then just disaggregated again, ISS assignments by race and ethnicity, IEP status, EL status, and then free and reduced lunch if they came.
Thank you. So now just taking a look at our interventions that we're currently using. The deans are using these interventions on top of our intensive student support. I'm going to talk about detention in a few minutes, but these are the proactive interventions we are doing. One note here is one of the ways that the dean's office has changed through the years is to process students, to process a referral takes much longer than it used to. It used to be get them in, get them out, get them in, assign the detention. You'll see in this next slide that when we're truly having a good restorative conversation, there's 8 steps to it. And when we watch this take place, it's not uncommon that these take over 15 minutes. And so it does take time. So that's just one of the things that we've learned moving towards a more proactive approach. That brings some. I didn't break something. So one of the more recent consequences that we put into place is detentions. The reason, I believe we're on year 2 or 3, but the reason we want to bring detention into play is that we moved to using ISS as a full day consequence for students. We saw that there was a need for some of the minor infractions to also have a consequence, and so that's one of the reasons why detentions were brought in. This slide here shows that typically, these are the infractions that we assign detention for, so our tardies. One of the things I wanted to make note about disrespect, since that came up earlier, I know that some committee work later on will take a look at this, but disrespect in the planner is actually a vague description, so that we need to take a look at that as well. So it could be, like if you read that, it could be minor or it could be severe, so that's definitely something to look at. But for some of those obvious minor infractions that are coded disrespect and those others up there, we assign detention.
And just for clarification, next year, there is no disrespect code. It's non-compliance. Is that correct? So hopefully, through that training and that discussion, it'll help with that a little bit, and we'll go from there. So thank you for sharing that, though, too.
So logistically speaking, one of the new, we used an attendance scanner this school year, so that was easier for our students to check in, check out. We were down 1 staff member at each campus. Hopefully, we're going to be able to find another detention supervisor for each campus here soon. But we believe that that'll help with a lot of that bookkeeping and things like that, because remember, students are in for an hour, maybe 2, then they're out. So, and then you factor in they need lunches sometimes. So there's just some of that bookkeeping that definitely, and supervision, that will need that support of that other staff member.
So is detention all during the school day? There's no like after school or Saturday detention? It's just during the school day, just lunches?
Yes, at the central campus.
Yep.
So we did pilot a few students in the past of staying after school. We just found that it's better during the school day. And then this slide just indicates, showing the number of referrals in these different areas, that we are using detention for the minor infractions. So we're looking just for improvements in that area, hiring another staff member at each campus. We do want our staff to use Infinite Campus a little bit more, writing some notes and counseling logs, things like that. So we're gonna continue with our training with them. And then it is a difficult task to keep track of what period, who's supposed to be there, did they show, did they not show? So just that ongoing support for the tracking document as well.
So is there separate training for para for detention? My concern is there are not enough special education paraprofessionals. So I would have some concern that we would be allocating staffing for this program during the school day when we don't have enough paras to support students with IEPs.
So we've been, so both programs have been allotted 2 paras, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to staff it over the last year. So we haven't pulled from anywhere to do that. We've been running with 1. We do have the para recruiting this Thursday, so we know like we need to prioritize what's important. Special education is going to take priority over detention. I'm going to remain hopeful because we've had a large amount of interest for Thursday that we're going to be able to do both. But then when it comes to specialized training, we work closely with our deans and JR and I to learn the system of the expectations when they enter the program and how to document that. So, hopefully that answers the question.
Well, I was just wondering if it's held during the school day and it's probably, you're not pulling kids out of their classes to attend detention, so you're looking at lunch detention.
Right.
So, could there be certain advisory teachers that are scheduled for detention? And that would be their supervision during that time? And then that would be housed by a certified staff member as part of like a supervision? I'm just thinking about the staffing.
We could look into, we can look into that. As Ms. Edelman shared, we're very excited, but cautiously optimistic. But we do have 50 individuals signed up for the para event this week, and we will have the ROE there for licensure. And we are planning to do on-the-spot interviews there as well. And so, but we certainly can do both at the same time. Look at what the feasibility is for that. The other problem, though, is if you talk to our schedulers, we don't have enough teachers to cover advisory. So it wouldn't necessarily be, can teachers do it? Do we have enough teachers that could do it? Because we're already, with the learning labs, AVID, and advisory, we may not have certified staff who can do it, but we can look at all of it. And then we'll keep you posted on how the event goes.
And there are times that there's applicants put in for special ed and for detention. And so I have talked with Ms. Sitar, like, did you see this one? Has a background in special ed, you might want to talk to her first. So we do communicate with each other on that too, because many times applicants put in for multiple jobs.
I do want to share one more bit of good news, which is the first time in 3 years we've been in this position. But after tonight, we will have filled all of our certified positions going into the 24-25 school year, which is very helpful too, because we have been relying heavily. I know, they're all like, I can't believe you said that. I'm gonna hear about this tomorrow.
No negativity, Mr. Hallahan. It's
But
all smooth sailing.
I'm going, right, we're gonna be hopeful. But why I share that is we have had to rely heavily on overloads for the last 3 years, which then doesn't allow, that extra ability for certified staff to help out. So we might also be in a slightly better position. So I think we can look at all of the above. And it's a good point.
So next, we're gonna take a look at our data from Regional Safe School, Lincoln School. So this data's a little bit repetitive of what I talked about before, but we had 17 students in the RSSP program. 8 of those students were from Central and 9 from West. This is the demographic information. It shows that our Hispanic and African American students are our highest level of expulsions. These are is a breakdown of the outcome of our RSSP program. Some students whether they didn't register or did not attend. These are the students listed, as you can see, who are still at Lincoln, whose paperwork is processing due to the time of year the expulsion took place. We're gonna move to our TAEOP program, which is our truancy program. This year we had 18 students who attended Lincoln School for the truancy program. 13 of those students were at Central and 5 were from West. This is a list of their outcomes, whether they're still at Lincoln coming into the next school year, whether they withdrew, returned back to JTHS. This is a breakdown of year in school, the demographic information. So year in school, gender, race. And so one of the things that we do with all students who attend Lincoln is that we have transition meetings for them to come back into our school. At the transition meeting is myself, our JT counselor, Lincoln counselor, the school dean, parent, and student. And the purpose of that meeting is to discuss the students' progress at Lincoln, develop a plan for them to return back to their home school to be as successful as possible.
So I'm having a little trouble with the math. So when I was looking at the 17 students that were sent to expulsion, right?
So we had a couple unique situations where a student was expelled more than once. And so currently, while they're enrolled, they are now on the list to re-enroll. So we had a couple situations like that.
Okay,
That's why that is.
that's, okay, that
Yes.
makes
Mhm.
sense now.
Yes.
I was just like, wait, and then the students that are, the TAEOP students, those are students that we didn't send there, that they were recommended to go there because of attendance or other kind of issues, right? There wasn't discipline
Correct.
related.
Correct. It's a parent, everyone opts into this
Yeah.
as the best intervention for the student. So this is gonna carry us over to our problem-solving circles data that is run, the program is run by Dean Thompson. So this data shows that we had 365 students who were placed on behavior warning this past year. 179 of those families submitted paperwork for problem-solving circles, and out of that, 129 families completed the full program. So we had 50 families that did not complete that program, who were of the ones who did complete the paperwork for it. And that was for a number of reasons. Didn't fill out the full paperwork, were unable to commit to the meetings, different family reasons that did take place. At the beginning of the school year, we will have 6 families that will complete the process, so that they are able to complete this program. We didn't want to have that a harsh cutoff if there was a reason why they were unable to do it. So we will have 6 families that will complete it at the beginning of the new school year. So here's the demographic information of the 179 families who did submit the paperwork for problem-solving circles. And this school year, this program began in 2012-2013, and this school year we have 849 families who have successfully completed the program since it began. The final thing I would like to do is just take a quick moment to acknowledge all of our participants from the community that have volunteered their time, because as we know, this program would not run without our community support.
So you're stuck with me for about the next 50 slides or so, but I will go through them fairly quick.
And I just want to acknowledge and congratulate Andre Bowie again for his new position. So next year, Andre will be sharing some of this information, but since he's been in the role for 16 days, his colleagues
thrown in the
are
deep end.
helping.
Get up there.
No, and these are things that we are very passionate about because these are the areas that help us reduce our disciplinary infractions. And we are very lucky here at JT to have 50 slides to review because they are interventions that help us do our job well. So as our substance abuse interventions, that's Amber Mitchell. A lot of this I'm going to review. It's truly going to be a refresher of things that you already know, but important to review annually. So Amber Mitchell is split between both campuses. She does help oversee our Rethink modules as well as do, as part of our partners with our BHT program, which we will review that data shortly. So this is just data comparison between last year and this year. You will see Amber Mitchell has had 176 referrals. That's a lot of referrals. So that's like her caseload as well as last year. So she doesn't just drop them because the year is over. She continues to follow up with these students. So this is a true need as her position. Obviously, she doesn't work in a silo. She works with our deans, counselors, social workers, our ISS team, and our Catalyst team. So these are our screening data, the breakdown of the demographics. And these are our scores because this is a screener. This isn't just, again, a gut feeling. This is an indicator that helps us determine the severity of the level of use. And then as our next step, some things that she does work with our students and families. We continue to have a lot of emphasis on working with families because much of some of our students, once they get to working with Amber, do have a significant level of use, and we are trying to work with our outside resources that can either push into our schools or that we can get them help outside of our school. One of the things that we are doing, and I wanted to highlight there, is that we are refreshing our staff and our ISS because they are doing the Rethink modules. It's important that we're not just rushing through those modules, that we're speaking to it, that our deans are aware of what they're working through so that we can have ongoing discussions. It's not just a one and done. And then it isn't just Amber. So as part of our Catalyst program, as you know, it is a 3-day intense program in lieu of a long-term suspension or expulsion. This is a one-time intervention, although we have been reviewing that. There's been a lot of discussion if we are going to use that again as an intervention. Some of the things that we look at as part of that 3 days, it's not a fix-all. There's an 8-week follow-up component. And if it's needed after 8 weeks, our deans work directly with our Catalyst supervisors to make sure, hey, the student is becoming a frequent flyer again. So we're going to work with our Catalysts as well as our Triangle teams to see if we can mitigate any increase in behaviors. So these are just the program activities that take place while in the 3-day program. And this is the breakdown. And as you look at Central's and West data, areas that we know that need to improve and we've adjusted some of our practices is refusal. So we do not want to see any student refusing or families refusing. Although they do have the right to do that, we are trying to identify why they're refusing. So some things and practices that JR and I started doing was that we call the next day. We give them kind of a cool down time frame. Many times it's a very raw moment, what took place, either they're in shock or they're defensive, maybe untrusting at that moment, and we want to re-engage that conversation. And many times, they will at least have a conversation about it. We encourage them to review the paperwork, just make an educated decision, not just an emotional decision about it. So those are some practices that we've tried to do to reduce the refusal rate. I'll pause for a minute because I know I've been through a few, but.
Are there any questions that have come to mind?
Okay. So our cool down room, again, this is a review of an intervention that has been in place for now 2 years. It is ran by a social worker in both buildings. This is just a safe place for students to go to if they can recognize their own emotion. Sometimes, the emotion can be a wide range, anything from anger to depression, anxiety, feeling of overwhelm. Any student can go here. They don't have to have an IEP. They don't have to have a diagnosis. But we want them to have a place that's not a bathroom. It's not a hideout. It's not pop in a door. It's a safe place for them to sometimes just be. Sometimes I want to go sit. So they do have fidgets, they have comfortable seating. We do make sure that we're monitoring that area. They do scan in and scan out so that we're able to monitor how long they're there. The social workers know not to have that be taken advantage of. Sometimes they're in there for 5 minutes, sometimes they're there for a period. If they're beyond a period, then we need to be looking at what other supports they need. Is this an increase that we need to now pull in other supports? Is this now, are they going to disclose something to us? But we do want to make sure that we're regulating that room, which the staff there have done a really good job.
Like, how do students, oops, sorry. How do students know that it's available? Like, how are they made aware?
So we do have see something, say something as part of that. We have another, what is the social work? I'm going to draw a blank here, where we have social workers in front of our students. Thank you. I'm like, what is it called? So as Suicide Awareness Week, we make sure our counselors and our social workers are getting in front of our students, making sure they know how to access their supports. We do have signs in our bathrooms, in our hallways, both in front of PPS and in front of our social work office, our social work suite at West. I know I've seen at Central, we have a lot of resource boards at Central. Is there other?
Yeah, there's some good signage that Ms. Laura has created at the Central campus. I know academy coordinators have sent out information to teachers to remind students that this is available. I've seen teachers pull students out in the hall and say, do you need to go to walk to the cool down room? So, you know, it's case by case, but really, the students know it's there.
Okay.
We do have, when we talk about signage, we have social workers have all put kind of their shot of their face and along with like what they do, where their alpha is, and cool down room is one of them as well, so that they kind of see the face. And that is something that's in classrooms, and it's in bathrooms.
Ms. Edelman, when you were talking about see something, say something, are you talking about Safety Week when we're?
We do.
Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more for the board, what that looks like and when we do that?
Sure.
And I know we change it a little bit each year and enhance it.
Yeah. So we do it as part of Safety Week, and it's within the first 2 weeks. Yeah, it's very early. And it is ran primarily by deans. And it goes over a lot of the highlights of expectations of behavior, but it also goes over supports. Because we don't want to come across as deans, as, you know, nasty person only, processors, referrals. We want them to know, like, these are your resources. We know that many times we get overwhelmed with things, or we have a conflict with a peer. These are places you can go when you're in those areas, so that behavior doesn't you know, expose itself, basically.
So if a student has like a 504 for anxiety, like they would be made aware that this is available to them?
Correct. So, and those are just some structures and activities that happen in our program. And this is a breakdown of the visits among campuses. And then by grade level. And these are our student support groups. Again, I know many of this you've heard before, but I think it's important for you to know that as part of our triangle teams, we do meet once a week. We have our deans, counselors, and social workers. We also have added psychologists to that team as part of our child find obligation. And just they have a lot of background that we can help our teams, as well as administrators sit on those triangle teams. And that is a way to identify students who may be showing risky behaviors or attendance or grades. So we're looking at all of those things to determine how can we provide some early intervention before a behavior or before they're not on track for graduation.
And I just want to say that one thing I think we have a lot to be proud of, but something that we're very proud of is just how we're enhancing our systems approach each and every year. and making sure our staff are aware of it. So we're layering in interventions, but just the systems approach that you need to have when you have the number of students we have, as well as the number of staff. And so, our staff knows now what the triangle team means and BHT and how these different teams work together. And I think from the outside, it can look like, what is all of this and everything? But it's what they do daily, and there's protected time for these teams to meet and to process the information. And there's never enough time. But really good work is being done, and we're getting better at it. I know each year. And so thank you again for the leadership of this team in helping with that.
And I'm very proud of our teams. Our teams are the ones that are building the agenda. They are bringing to each other students that they know are struggling, and they can help to provide some early intervention, some prevention, so that things don't get at a place where we're needing to provide discipline or credit recovery. So those are their attempts. And here's some breakdown of the different groups that we have at Central and what ran this year, how many students we were able to assign, and then here at West. These are an area that we are doing some summer work in, and part of what we will be using our SIP time for is building our curriculum, as well as identifying what our needs are of our students, as looking at that data and saying, okay, are these still needs? Are these things that we need to tweak? Or they've been shown to be effective? I went over a bit of that. So we've previously discussed in one of our board meetings, Carasalis, you are familiar with that. Due to some of our ESSER funds no longer being available to us, this is something that we will be moving to ThriveWorks. But as you review this, we were able to meet a lot of our families' mental health and substance abuse needs. That will not go to the wayside, that will be transitioning to ThriveWorks. As I think most of you already know, that is our partnership with the City of Joliet. It's not going to be a burden to our families financially. So it's a very nice partnership. We will continue to utilize that throughout this year.
Well, and it's not just a financial partnership. I'd like to highlight Ms. Stiff and Dr. Guzman's work with the city in cracking down on the sale of a lot of these vapes to our students. And I think you can see that over the last 2 years. That's made a big difference between having Amber in the buildings to work with the kids on top of limiting the access.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's something that I think we're going to hopefully continue to echo throughout this year, of ways that we plan to respond to the crisis that we don't just see in this district or in this community. And I hope that we continue to see a lot of advocacy at an even higher level to stop this. I mean, we are definitely looking at some of these industries targeting our kids, and then we're cleaning up the mess. So
Well, and it starts even younger than high school. I see it
Absolutely.
firsthand. I mean, you'd be shocked how young some of the kids are that are getting access to this.
Right.
I also just want to include the ThriveWorks partnership, and I just want to thank the board for their support. And, obviously we had the ESSER funds, and we're continuing this work in this partnership for these wraparound services for families that might not reside in Joliet. And that model, because during my sit-down with Senator Capel and Representative Manley, I learned that there is, this is looking to potentially go countywide and statewide. And we can say that we serve as a model for this that has been shared in many, many communities. And I think it's our focus on partnerships that you can see throughout this presentation and all the other things we do. But again, thank our team. And Julie and JR do a lot of work with community partners. It's a scheduling, expertise that they have to how do we utilize our staff and then as well as support staff to just provide more for our students. But those partnerships, like, we understand that at Joliet Township High School, and we work really hard on maintaining and creating those new partnerships.
It is for sure a collaborative effort. I mean, Will County, we're very lucky to have as many resources as we have that are willing to push in and reduce the obstacles that we have for our families and students. So it's definitely a collaborative effort in-house as well, so. And that's a good segue to our behavioral health team. So BHT is a term that we use often and want to make sure we highlight that it does stand for behavioral health team. That does consist of 2 counselors, 2 social workers, and our assistant principal, and sometimes PPS, we kind of tag team on that depending on availability, and our psychologist. A BHT referral comes through the Triangle team, and it can also come through our Catalyst. Identify that students need a possible higher level of support for mental health or usage. So as the BHT team then reviews if they are appropriate to be referred to an outside or inside group. So those are some of the community partners that we do work with. So you can see the numbers of what we've that come into and how often they come in. And it is a logistically, Amber Mitchell's done a great job with it. Andre's gonna be picking up a lot of that as well. You still awake over there, Andre? Okay. Because as we know, as we just listened to our architect, it is logistically very challenging to coordinate who's there, when they're there, all of those kinds of things. But it's in the best interest of our students, and they've done a nice job making some really strong connections to some of these outside counselors. And some of the things that we did this year was that we continued it through the summer. Some of our students are even coming back in the building for services, and some of them are doing it virtually. So we'll be able to continue those services over the summer. And there's some of our breakdown of our referrals for Central. Also through our BHT is how we make a determination if the team determines Bravo is the right intervention. So our Bravo program, we work very close with Joe Wooten, keep them part of the conversation. If we are looking at needing of a smaller setting, looking at what can be, if all interventions at a building level, campus level have been utilized, what's our next step? Is Bravo a possibility? So that does come through BHT as that discussion, and we bring Pathway into that conversation as well. So that's your breakdown. And I think this is my last section. Do we have any other questions? Okay. So our home visit overview. We have been very fortunate to be able to have home visit liaisons, and we have leaned on them quite a bit. And here's some of the reasons why. You know, we have chronic absenteeism. We've been trying to get a hold of the family. We can't get a hold of the family. Then we may send somebody out there to try to make that connection. Beyond using home visit liaisons, we've also, during parent-teacher conferences, we've had some of our Triangle teams come together and go out to homes as well. We've had some administrators, along with case managers or social workers, take IEP paperwork out and do some home visits, because we know in order to process and move forward with that case study, we need the signature. So we do go out and try to make that connection with the families. And there's the breakdown of some of our home visits. Any other questions?
All right, the home stretch action plan 1.5 restorative practices. We will continue our initiatives that were adopted a couple years back. in partnership with our families, we will continue restorative practices and maintaining a culturally sustaining educational experience for our students. Again, this is part of our strategic plan 1.5, and some of the things that we did this past school year are listed here for you. Some key points is we did have a student voice program where the principals, along with some other staff members, got with students to give their perception, interpretation of things and how things, culture and climate-wise, are going in the school. We also did some culture and climate teams with staff at the school, led by the principals. And then this year, we are pretty excited. About half of our teachers will participate on SIP days in restorative practices and getting to learn that. And by the conclusion of the 25-26 school year, well over 90%, 95% of our teachers will have gone through the restorative justice cohorts.
Nice.
And that is it. Any questions?
Nope, but I do have something to say. I want to applaud all of you for your work that you are doing and you are continuing to do. What I keep hearing is that there is still work to do. No school district is perfect. No school district is perfect. But what I like about what we're doing is that we are starting to identify where our issues are and address those needs and not try to hide them. I love that, and I thank you all for doing that.
Thank you so much. And that concludes our superintendent reports.
Thank you. So we now move on to our action items. Action item A, agreement between Joliet Township High School and Guardian Angel Community Services. This is where we are, Guardian Angel wishes to continue our collaborative network agreement to provide comprehensive services to the community. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Action item B, agreement between Joliet Township High School and Restoring the Community. They are seeking approval to continue providing peer facilitation and leadership in restorative practices. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Action item C, agreement between Joliet Township High School and American Red Cross. This is a recommendation to use the JTHS facility in case of a disaster or an emergency. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomera?
Yes.
Office staff job description updates. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Dr. Hampton, can you elaborate on this, please, briefly?
Yes, this, excuse me, actually, this is a recommendation coming from the Job Description Committee. This is derived from a negotiated contract with office staff. We met several times. Every office staff member had an opportunity to review his or her job description and provide feedback. From that feedback, the committee took that information and updated the job descriptions accordingly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero-Nomera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Action item E, superintendent contract. I received a question via email. Let me just get to it. Oh, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Question, comments. So I received a question via email, and it says, why would we want to renegotiate a contract when the superintendent is barely, maybe, a third of the way into her existing 5-year contract? So I wrote a narrative as to why we should extend this contract. During Dr. Guzman's tenure, we have witnessed significant improvements in the district. Dr. Guzman has been the superintendent for the last 4 years and came during the global transformation of COVID-19. This disruption altered people's lives instantly and significantly, where everyone had to adjust. I'm here to remind people of all the good work that the superintendent has done and why her contract should be extended until 2029. So let me tell you firsthand that JTHS District 204 already had one-to-one technology. This made us instantly prepared for remote learning. Dr. Guzman partnered with Joliet Fire Department and the Health Department to administer vaccinations to get people back to school and back to work. In getting students back to school, we recognize that isolation and the social distancing affected the mental health of so many students and staff that the district created a social, emotional, and behavior supports. We created behavioral health teams, behavioral interventions, triangle teams, rethink substance use intervention, cool-down rooms, and much more. Our academic achievements is on an upward trend. We have a number of Illinois State scholars, summa cum laude graduates, advanced placement has risen. We've added 3 AP classes. Our score growth has improved. We also added credit recovery and support programs, virtual tutoring, Gateway to Graduation 1.0 and 2.0, MTSS, and instructional coaches. The focus has also been put on career and technical education, along with dual credit opportunities. Certificates, students are obtaining certificates by high school graduation. A rigorous strategic plan. She's developed a 5-year strategic plan with various stakeholders. This plan charts the future of our district and is a living document that is used to improve our schools. The board approved 4 strategies and associated action plans. You can find this on the website. Our 15-year facility master plan is in place. And as you will notice, there's a lot of work being done on our facilities. Our partnerships, we have over 800 partnerships with community organizations, as evident as it was at our Salute to Service partnership event. I am 100% sure I've left off a number of accomplishments, but we do produce points of pride document that provides a summary of our accomplishments that can also be found on the website. Additionally, we have Dr. Hampton, Assistant Superintendent. We have Diane McDonald, another Assistant Superintendent, and we have our Principal, Shad Hallahan of Central, all retiring within the next few years. Dr. Guzman is the constant that we need to remain in this district if we want to continue on this trajectory. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes, sorry. No offense, but you did leave off a few too many. And I'm mostly offended by the fact that you did not mention any of our ELL programs, our newcomers program, the fact that we added several new spots, including new liaisons that speak our students' language and understand their cultural differences. We now have a chief of equity and strategic partnerships, which I think that all school districts should have. So that was a big deal to me. And then the introduction of curriculums that meet the needs of our students across the board. And from what I understand, our students speak a minimum of 26 various languages, and those curriculums will meet those needs. So I just wanted to make sure that was included. And then you mentioned most of the others.
Thank you. I do have some comments. So I just feel that extending the contract of the superintendent, who still has 3 years remaining, would be premature and irresponsible. It's crucial to uphold accountability and ensure that the superintendent's performance continues to align with the evolving needs of our school district. By maintaining the current contract timeline, we preserve the flexibility needed to assess effectiveness and make informed decisions in the future. The likelihood of the 7 of us being on a board in 2029 is unlikely. We are placing undue constraints on any future boards, and this extension only serves the superintendent and not the best interest of the community and the board. I'm just confused as to why, Dr. Guzman, this has to be now.
Any other, go
I
ahead.
would say that extending Dr. Guzman with the job that she's done wouldn't be a disservice to future boards or the community. And I realize it is unorthodox, right? And that's what the email had said, it's unorthodox, but JT, one of the prides of JT is we have been unorthodox, and it's worked in our favor to be progressive and be unorthodox. Our one-to-one initiative is what really set us way further ahead than most districts, right? And so I understand your point and where you're coming from. I think that some of the things you see as a negative are actually, in my opinion, a positive, so.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Kennedy. Having a constant, stable force in our community is a great thing, and not only that, she's a positive, constant force in our community. And it's not just the JT community, but the entire Joliet community. Bringing forth initiatives of the vaping and things like that. She doesn't just work with, within the boundaries of this school district. She works with the entire community. So I see it as a constant, stable force for the entire community.
I would like to say a couple things. I would think that Dr. Guzman would not want an extension. Her contract that she signed is a 2-year extension that she signed in good faith 19 months ago, and does have 3 years left of her current contract. I guess my main concern is that I've said in the past, the Illinois report card for District 204, the 14% reading proficiency and the 18% for the math. And I have to say, as a board, I don't know why we're even considering it when she has 3 years left. And the other thing, in a monetary sense, is at the end of it, she'll probably be paid one of the highest amounts of any superintendent in all of Illinois. And I think 3 years would be more than enough time to see what happens with any programs that we're setting up.
Any additional comments, questions?
One more thing I just wanted to say, congratulations again to Ms. Takara Parker and our superintendent regarding this on being named to the top 40% of high schools across America in U.S. News and World Report. And to add to that, we are the 3rd largest city in the state of Illinois, the 2nd largest municipality as far as land. And then when you earn, when you're good, you earn the type of money that comes along with that. And her contract extension, again, going back to what everyone else said, speaks to the need for stability. And when you're a partner in this city and with this county, it's extremely important. Thank you.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn? Yes. Mrs. Guerrero-Namera?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
No.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
No.
Action item F, personnel reports, 1 through 12. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Excuse me, yes.
Mrs. Brown-O'Hare?
Yep.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mrs. Stipp?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Is there any unfinished business?
No.
New business? No.
Policy updates.
Yep.
Thank you for the cliff notes.
Right?
There's just really minimal changes, so if you have any questions, please let me know, but they're very minimal. There's word here, a word there.
This is first read, correct? We'll vote next month.
Yes.
Okay.
And you should have received the spreadsheet that has the summary of it too. So again, please reach out to me with any questions you may have.
I just want to say thank you for the spreadsheet, because that,
Cliff notes help.
oh my gosh. I mean, I work with them, so I'm used to it, but still, it's a lot.
You're welcome.
Yep. Any board reports?
I have two of them. Number one, I want to thank all of our staff that have been heavily involved in all of the cleanup and the communication. Our communications team, our administration for making the decisions, getting information out to families, and then our buildings and grounds. I was able to stop by Central on Sunday. I was driving downtown and happened to see some of our buildings and grounds crew out there working, and stopped in and checked on them, and just the work they were doing. I mean, thank you so much for getting it in a space where we could have kids come back. I know Central's where we're doing our credit recovery summer school, and that's really important to be able to get the kids in. So just the work that they were doing was fantastic. I was able to speak with Coach Mack from Central, this is our flag football coach. Let me know that the Bears have donated equipment to help start the flag football program, and the Steelmen will be attending training camp on July 23rd. They will get to meet the Bears head football coach, Matt Eberflus, so if I could get a jersey and stick in there, it would be nice. But he's also personally donated the uniforms, so the kids get to take pictures with him, and will attend a clinic after the training camp. And a big thank you to our football staff down at Central. Coach Mack has let me know that they've been very influential and helpful in helping anything that she needs to help get the program off the ground. So it's nice to see that team effort.
I ran into somebody that knows a lot of things about ROTC and said to me, "Congratulations, Joliet Central." And I was ashamed that I didn't know, but he filled me in. Impressive. So I just want to congratulate the ROTC.
It was Joliet West, right? It was Joliet West, and they are, it's okay, it's national, and we wanted to recognize them this month, but one of the students was out of town.
Okay.
So we are planning on recognizing them next month.
Nice.
Well, they said nice things about Joliet Central's program as well, too.
And both programs, having a student go through both of them, they're both fantastic.
Well, and just, we get to see them every month when they come here and help us, get the whole meeting started. That's probably my favorite part of the meeting is when the kids come in and do that. It's just awesome.
On August 2nd, I will be presenting, and Mrs. Stiff also, I think I asked you. I couldn't remember. Presenting our resolution to the committee, and they will then, at that point, vote to see if they will bring it to the General Assembly of voting in the conference.
Can you explain what that committee is, please?
It is the board, the Illinois Association of School Board. It's their board that will be listening to them and then deciding from there what to bring forth to all the members.
So it's like a committee
Yeah.
that sends it out? Okay.
Yes.
And I think they still bring it forth. They will make a recommendation whether they approve it or not.
I'm sorry, I had that mixed up. And then thank you for all of us board members who are here, regardless of the damage we have in our houses or electricity or not, because I know all of us do not have electricity and all of us don't have, some of us did have damage. So thank you for all of us board members that made it a priority to be here.
I just want to say also, I got to meet some of the interns that we have from this awesome program that we did with CED, and I met some from LEDA, I met some from the Joliet Township government and other places, and I thought it was also really cool that it wasn't just our current high school students, but some of our graduates are also still doing the internship programs. And then, I don't think we mentioned this, but I don't know if everybody knew that our new Director of Economic Development, I think is the title, is a graduate, a Steelman, Paulina Martinez, and I don't think that we noticed or mentioned that, and that's just amazing that we have a Steelman at the City of Joliet now in that position.
And she did come to visit and was introduced to everybody here.
One thing I would also like to add is new parent to JTHS. I was really impressed when I saw that the orientations that we have for the freshmen and that how organized we are on registration and things like that. I know we always been, but paying close attention detail to all the little things, I have been fully impressed by what we do.
Thank you.
Any other board reports?
I have an announcement if you have. Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to also say thank you to our buildings and grounds and echo what Mr. Kennedy said. I also want to say thank you to our administration and our communications department. During our summer DLT workshop, district leadership team, I asked everyone to give me their cell phone number, and then I give me theirs, and I tell them I will not take advantage of it, and hopefully no one felt they're taken advantage of this morning, but all those cell phone numbers were pretty much used. So I thank our team, because at about 5:15, there was about 800 conversations going on, and our communications department, especially Christine, who was at a workshop on a different time zone that happened to be about 3 a.m. where she was at, and dealing with the communication issues we were having because of the storm. I just thank everybody for their hard work today. West Campus was here most of the day, so it was nice working with West today. The power is on at West Campus for our community members, and so I know we will miss you tomorrow, but they will be back at West Campus. And again, apologize to any families if there was, that cutoff communication. We know we had issues due to some of, I think, the electricity and platform. So we're still looking into those, but thank you to everyone. And then I just want to also say thank you to the board for the extension of my contract. I just finished my 25th year, and you almost made me cry earlier, but I just finished my 25th year in the district, and I love this district, and I'm excited to continue to work for this district in my community with our kids and in partnership with wonderful people in our